Well, hello there, and welcome here to Ben's Album Challenge on Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So Ben's Album Challenge, this is an episode that I do pretty much bi-weekly now. It alternates with the Great Album Challenge. Comes out on Sunday night. And basically what we talk about here is Ben, which is a subscriber of mine, friend. He picks an album and then I review it. That's pretty much all there is to it. He does like me to choose one song from the album. It might be a little more difficult with today's particular choice, but nevertheless, this is an album that I've owned before and I now own again. Purchased it yesterday while I was out. Sorry, there's a truck going by outside. So this is the album we're doing today, Rick Wakeman's Six Wives of King Henry VIII. This album, great album. One of the first kind of, I think it was, and I'm hard pressed to think of another album, but I think this definitely was the first all instrumental album I ever owned. I cannot think for the life of me if there was another one, but I think this was the first one and probably the only one for quite a few years. So this album was released on January the 23rd, 1973. It was recorded at Morgan and Trident Studios in London. It's about 36 minutes in length. A&M Records, of course, and Rick Wakeman produced it. So, very good album. He plays like a horde of instruments on this. I'm not going to go into everything he plays. Actually, maybe I will for him, but not like there's a horde of musicians on this album. I'm not really going to get into all of them. So Rick Wakeman, he plays a couple of mini Moog synthesizers on here, or he uses them, I guess is a better term to describe it. He has a couple of Mellotrons on here, two 400Ds, that is, to be specific, a Steinway grand piano, a custom-built Hammond organ, C3, an REM electric piano, and you can hear that quite clearly on some of the tunes as well. Harpsichord, an ARP synthesizer. Well, it doesn't actually play that, but he does work with it. A church organ, when he's really good at the church organ too. A Thomas G. What is this? Thomas Gorf, sorry. Harpsichord, just a slightly different type of harpsichord. And a St. Giles without the cripple gate portative organ. So, yeah, lots of different stuff he plays. There's a horde of musicians playing on here. The basic ones like Steve Howe's on here, Chris Squire's on here, Alan White's on here, Bill Bruford's on here, and then there's a horde of other people that play various different stuff throughout the album. There is no vocals on the album. There is a little bit of what I would call hymns, maybe like hymn type vocals. I wouldn't even call it that. It's just noise making, basically what it is. So this album has 6 tracks on it. The Six Wives, right? So he does one track for each of the 6 wives, tries to incorporate their personality as he sees it into his music. A lot of good stuff here. I did make some notes about it. So there's some fantastic high-speed keyboard parts on here. Like the guy's fingers are like amazing. He does play a lot of. He uses a lot of different synthesizers on most of the tracks. There is some organ. You will hear, especially the church organ, very dominant on some tracks. There's quite a bit of Hammond organ here, but not as much as you might think. And of course the piano, both the grand piano and the electric piano get used a fair bit on here as well. Pretty dominant keyboard album for sure. But the drums are very prominent on a lot of the tracks as well. It's both Bill Bruford and Alan White. I think I know which ones are which, but not 100%. So there is a little bit of guitar. I did hear a couple of acoustic bits by Steve Howe. And there's bass on a lot of tracks too. Some of it by Chaz Crank, and I think at least one track that Chris Squire plays on as well. Yeah, so a very, very solid album, and I will actually, there's a picture of the 6 Wives. and he gives a little, well, I don't know what you would call it. Maybe you call it a eulogy of these wives, because Henry VIII, he didn't like staying married very long, and in that time period you couldn't divorce, so he would just get rid of them. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, the last one, Catherine of Parr, of course, survived. Alan White, Bill Bruford, and Barry DeSalzo are the drummers on this album. White doing 2, 4, and 6th tracks, while Bill Bruford on the 1st and the 5th. I knew that Bill was on the 1st one, I could tell right away. Barry DeSalzo playing the 3rd track. There's some percussion here by Cooper and Frank Riccardi. Electric banjo by Dave Cousins is on this. There is some vocals, but I think it's more like harmony vocals or church hymns, that kind of thing. There's not a lot though. Bass, Dave Winters on tracks 2 and 6, Chris Squire on track 1, Chaz Kronk on track 3, and Les Hurdle on 1 and 5. Guitar, Mike Egan's on 1, 2, 5, and 6. Dave Lambert on 3, and Steve Howe on 1. It looks like the Yes members all played on track 1, except for Alan White. Yeah, so lots of great instrumentation on here. There's some really fine soloing. This is one of the, if you like really fine soloing, keyboard dominated album, this is the album you were going to listen to for sure. Okay, so we'll do a little breakdown of the songs. There's not a huge difference in a lot of the tracks. Some are a little more subdued or more subtle in their nature, others more flamboyant, some more forward or high speed, others less of so, but Rick Wakeman tends to like to play his keyboards fairly fast as well, so he's not slow. So the first track, Catherine of Aragon, who was King Henry VIII's first wife. She was his first wife for a good 20 years too, but she bore him no heirs, and she was also Spanish, so the only way to get rid of her was to basically have her removed. Now I can't remember, did she die? I think she either died, let me see what it says here. She was the youngest child of Ferdinand and Isabel, so yeah, the famous Spanish throne. He wanted her out because he wanted a kid and she did not have any. And she died about 3 weeks after her 50th birthday. I think she just died of natural causes, but I can't quite remember what happened with her. Anyways, the song has a lot of piano in it, to be expected. She was a classical person. It's a pretty forceful track too. Like, it's frontal in every way you can think of. The bass and drums are very upbeat here, almost something you wouldn't expect on an album like this. Very upbeat, and of course that makes sense because it's Chris Squire and Bill Bruford on this track. Synthesizers, a lot of somber atmosphere towards the middle and end of it. I like this track though. The next song is Anne of Cleves. So Anne of Cleves, the song has this kind of the TV show Twilight Zone. It has that kind of feel to it at the beginning. It almost feels like you're going into the Twilight Zone. I'm not sure what instrument he's using here, but it's a keyboard synthesizer dominated opening anyways. It's pretty fast paced, pretty heavy track as well. Very keyboard dominated, as you might expect on an album like this, right? Drums are prominent along with the bass, and there is some awesome church organ on this particular track too that I quite like. This is one of my more favorite tracks by on this album. The next song up is Catherine Howard. Now, Catherine Howard, I'm not quite sure what Catherine Howard. Well, Anne of Cleves. Well, I think they were both killed, but I'm not 100% sure. But Catherine Howard, it starts with a piano. It's kind of a happy sounding start. Then it gets very fast paced again. More symphonic dominated track with some upbeat drums and piano towards the end of this track. It's and it ends with a pipe organ, which is really, those church organs, those pipe organs, they are one of the easiest instruments to pick out. They're so, they just blot out everything else on the album when they're going. Yeah, so he does that very well. That's so good on this track. And this is one of my least favorite of the tracks on the album, but I do like that pipe organ at the end. Okay, the next track is the Jane Seymour one. Now, Jane Seymour was the blonde girl that took over from Anne Boleyn. She became his next wife, came from a very prominent but well-respected family as well. This starts out very easygoing, which I can understand because I found Jane Seymour's character to be like that. But it does speed up and almost has this butterfly effect where that buzzing, it's buzzing all, well, it's not buzzing, well, I guess that would be a bee effect, but it has that butterfly floating kind of sporadically all over the place feel to it. It's more, the organ on this, the church organ or the pipe organ if you prefer, is more subdued than the other organ, although it is a church organ, so it's very hard for it to be up tempo, and it does play well with the synthesizer parts on here too. I think really good. Okay, so the last two tracks, the Anne Boleyn and Catherine Parr, are probably, the Anne Boleyn track is one of my least favorite on the album. It does have some good parts to it. It's the only one with a part title to it other than her name. It also has the day through gravest Lord hath ended. It's the only one. All the other ones, it's just their name. Only this one. She was beheaded, of course, as you know, for I think she was accused of infidelity and plotting against the king. Well, I think everybody was plotting against everybody in that time period. So it starts out with a kind of piano and very kind of bluesy, almost a bluesy feel to it. Well, it's not bluesy, but it has that kind of bluesy feel to it. That's how it starts anyways. Then it gets very fast paced with some strong piano, keyboards, and synthesizer punctuated by some drum parts in there as well. It's a bit of a scattered sound, this particular song. It's kind of all over the place, which might explain Anne Boleyn very well, actually. It's sometimes busy, but sometimes strange, with kind of a keyboard. I don't know, it's kind of a weird keyboard sound to it. So that could actually be one of the synthesizers, keyboard played through a synthesizer. It could be. And anybody knows, I would be curious to know as well. Okay, so the final track on this is it ends out fairly strong. I do like Catherine Parr's because she survives Henry VIII, which nobody else was doing very well. Anyways, Catherine Parr, so it's kind of a slow-paced, heavy rhythm beat, and very melodic drum machine, drum fill. I'm not sure what you want to call it. Some brilliant piano on this track, though. Just absolutely killer piano. Like, this guy's fingers are just unbelievable the way he can go. And he speeds it up as it goes along. It becomes a very upbeat, up-tempoed song at some point. Some nice fills here and there by different instruments. Yeah, very, very strong ending to the album. And, rightly so, Catherine Parr did survive. She was the only one who survived King Henry VIII. So I guess that's reason to be upbeat, right? So my favorite track is probably Anne of Cleves. Oh, sorry, not Anne of Cleves. I don't know why I was going to say that. My favorite track is probably the Jane Seymour track. But, I do like Catherine Parr and Anne of Cleves as well. All three of those tracks easily could be a kind of a tie. There's not a lot of difference. The thing about this album I like is that there's no really weak tracks, but there's no really dominant tracks either. It's a very good album, but it's definitely acquired taste, because you will find, if you do not like that classical sound or all of the piano playing and stuff like that, you will not like this album. However, if you like musical interpretation of personality, you will like this a lot. I find that I like this album a lot. So when I saw it there yesterday when I was at the record store, I said, well, I'm doing the show tomorrow. It would be nice to have the album as well. So there we are. The Rick Wakeman's Six Wives of King Henry VIII. He's got a horde of albums. I don't know, he might be 60 to 100, somewhere in there. At one point he was releasing like 4 a year. But this, I believe this is his first studio album, released in '73. Yep, excellent album. Give it a try, or you can listen to it online, see if it's your cup of tea. It's definitely mine. I like it. So there you have it. Ben's Album Challenge is finished now. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you got any comments about today's episode, please leave them below in the comment section. Hit the like button at the bottom on my right, your left, and the subscribe button here over on my right, your left. Or I guess the other one would be left and right? Okay. Anyways, it was fun to do the episode, and I hope to see you again next week. But next week we'll be doing the Great Album Challenge, and he's coming with the year 1971 and a absolute killer set of albums here. It's going to be very tough. So we will see you then. So take care. Have a good day. Goodbye.